Dear participants, welcome to One Planet Network Sustainable Food System Program 4th Conference Side Event, Pursuing Win-Wins for Nutrition and Environment through a Food System Approach. I'm Roberto Sofeifa, representing the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock in Costa Rica. Food systems are a complex set of social, economic, and environmental interactions, which require our attention in pursuing actions that favor the balance between these three dimensions for their sustainability. The food systems approach is a valuable tool for analyzing and addressing actions in terms of people's nutrition and natural resources health. Implementing actions based on nature and people health is a challenge that we must urgently address. Various experiences around the world, which from the sustainable food system approach promote changes in production and consumption patterns, are demonstrating the benefits in terms of people's nutrition and the reproduction of ecosystems. The One Planet Network Sustainable Food System Program plays an important role in promoting sustainable production and consumption patterns, as it is a multi-actor partnership focused on catalyzing urgent transformation towards sustainable food systems as a critical strategy to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal. Sustainable Food System Program promotes a system-based approach which tackles the food system as a whole, taking into account the interconnections between the elements and actors of our food systems and the indispensable trade-offs. For Costa Rica to be part of the Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Committee and co-lead of the Sustainable Food System Program has been a golden experience to learn and contribute in the program's trajectory. To accelerate and strengthen the steps towards sustainable food systems, it is necessary to combine public practice efforts, and in particular at the level of the countries, joint efforts between the Ministries of Agriculture, Environment, Health, Economy, among other actors of the public policies. In the context of the United Nations, the joint work with a common vision by its organizations, which happily is happening as One Planet Network, represent important opportunities to advance efficiently towards sustainable food systems, particularly the work between UN Nutrition and UN Environment, joining capacities and knowledge in favor of sustainable food system development and forging ties between countries and various regions of the world is a very valuable effort to advance in development of solutions in favor of people nutrition, reproduction of ecosystems, and the good health of the planet. The efforts that countries are promoting within the framework of the United Nations are very significant. To have metrics that are appropriate to the countries' capacities and expressed in easily understandable language is a factor that should be worked on to support the results and make better decisions. I wish the best for everybody and a very good session with insightful and fruitful discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Roberto, from Costa Rica, the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock. I'm really grateful to be working with you again, and I am really grateful for the powerful examples Costa Rica is delivering over and over again as one of the front-runner countries, I could say. My name is Tineke Oenema. I am the Executive Secretary of the UN Nutrition, and UN Nutrition is the interagency collaboration and coordination mechanism for nutrition. And I'm happy to be your moderator during this event. So before we start, a few housekeeping rules. They may be not needed because so many people are already used to be working online. I also know that there's some people in Hanoi on the spot, but most of us are online. I'm happy to say that we have about 250, even over 250 participants registered, up to 300, I was informed just now. Not all of them are online, but don't worry, those people that have registered will be able to access the recordings of this event later on. Having said that, this record will be This event is recorded and will be posted online. We are speaking in English today, and unfortunately we do not have any interpretation, but I hope you will be able to follow anyway. You can see there is a Q&A box, so if you have any questions, please submit your questions using the Q&A box, and then we will be trying to address them during the event. Okay, back to the event itself. Welcome to the event Pursuing Win-Wins for Nutrition and the Environment through a Food Systems Approach. The main objective of the event is to launch the UN Nutrition discussion paper, Nutrition and the Environment, Nurturing People, Protecting the Planet. This discussion paper has been developed under the umbrella of UN Nutrition, and really with a big thanks to UN Environment as the agency that took the lead in developing this paper. But of course, the other agencies, member agencies of UN Nutrition have submitted many valuable comments. I'd like to say one thing about the paper, and I know James will be presenting the paper itself. Just want to say that me as a nutrition, I like to highlight that diet and nutrition are at the heart of the nutrition and environmental nexus. That's the main reason we did the paper, and it gives us so many entry points to work on both healthier people and protecting the planet. So diet is the core. Our speakers, of course, will go into that, and they will showcase good practices that support co-benefits for nutrition and the environment from cities and regions around the world. And those examples will illustrate the findings of the paper with real-life experiences. So the session, as I said, will start with an explanation, a presentation of the main findings and the key messages of the paper, and that will be done by James Lomax from the United Nations Environmental Programme. Then we will have an intervention from Tom Arnold, providing examples from Ireland, and we'll have a panel with people from all around the world, Kenya, Brazil, Bali, and Zimbabwe, of good practices that support, again, those co-benefits for nutrition and the environment. We do have time for interaction with you as participants. We will have about 30 minutes during which we can address your questions, and the panelists will be able to either address them in writing or address them live in this session. And then, of course, we will close the session, and by that time I will be able to hand over the floor to Nancy Aburto from FAO, who will say a few words on behalf of the Healthy Diet from Sustainable Food System Coalition. Okay, so that's the session in a nutshell. I'd like to give the floor now to James Lomax from UNEP, UN Environmental Programme, to set the scene and to present the key messages of the paper. James, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Stinica. It's an honor to be here to talk to all of you online. Just to say that we're actually in a room in Hanoi. And it's really exciting actually to be here in person. It's the first time I've been in person to a Food Systems Planet event for a while, so it feels fantastic. And we've had a really good week so far, talking about all sorts of things, from coalitions and systems approaches through to consumption and agroecology. So it's been a really great week. Stinica, we really miss you. I wish you were actually here in person as well. So listen, look, this paper is a great paper. This paper talks about, first of all, it's a product of collaboration, of course, between UNEP and the UNN, the UN Nutrition. And I think it's a continuation of work that I think we started under the UN Standing Committee on Nutrition a few years ago, starting to identify really the links between nutrition, the way we eat and how we eat, and climate change. Now, every year UNEP does an emission gap report. And for the last few years, it's been quite explicit in how the emission gap, while the mitigation gap can be closed, of course, through issues around production of food, greenhouse gases, etc., when it comes to livestock and land use change, etc. But I think what's becoming much more mainstream now are the consumption sides, or the IPCC calls it demand side measures, the wrong way around. So the demand side measures are really quite clear. You know, they talk about the need to change diets. They talk about the way we need to change and prevent food waste, etc., etc. And slowly, this is starting to come in to the vernacular, I think, of the UNFCCC, and we're hoping, working in the follow-up to the Coronivia process with the Sharm el-Sheikh Joint Working Group on food security, we can actually start to bring these issues into the conversation. So, what's so special about this paper? The paper identifies synergies and puts forward policy options that can generate co-benefits for people and the planet. I think it's been a feeling, if you like, or we've had the gut feeling, that, no pun intended, that in fact there was a connection between what we ate, our health, and of course the health of the planet. But I still think it's quite an embryonic piece of work, and politically it's very sensitive still, as countries move from developed to middle income on the one hand, and on the other side we're looking at developed countries and how their food systems are shifting even more to a monoculture model of food, where fast food is a very, very strong determinant of diets. Okay, so what does this actual paper say? So the paper says that there is increasing evidence that the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution is exacerbating the hunger and malnutrition crisis, creating a vicious cycle with the most vulnerable and disproportionately affected. And I think this really comes down to equity when it comes to natural resources, land, etc. A very good example of this as well was the immediate issues when it came to the Ukraine crisis, where in fact those countries that were the most vulnerable and that were reliant upon grain coming, or the global nature of grain supply. But also we've got to understand that diets and food systems are at the heart of the nutrition environment nexus. So the food we eat, how it is produced, and its journey from farm to flush determine how food systems affect human and planetary health. So I think this is a very important nexus that we have to take forward. There are some key figures that back this up. Food systems account for up to 34% of the anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions that cause climate change. Pollution from food systems is behind about 32% of terrestrial acidification and 78% of aquatic eutrophication. And food systems are also key contributors to biodiversity loss, which I think is something that is truly put forward in the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework that came out of the COP15 in December last year. But we're also looking at the importance of all of these things when it comes to not only that food systems cause this, but in fact they also hinder our ability to, if you like, change the vicious cycle of producing what we are producing. So of course food systems are caused, but they're also impacted by climate change. Now, there are many drivers sort of causing this, but when we look at population growth, urbanization, economic growth, and the unequal distribution of power in food systems, we see that they're fueling a transition to diets high in refined carbohydrates, fat, salt, and ultra-processed foods. These diets tend to have low nutritional quality and high environmental footprints, exacerbating both environmental and nutritional challenges. And therefore, you've got to say, okay, fine. So a shift to diets that incorporate more nutritious food and diverse varieties, such as fruits, vegetables, etc., and other underutilized and indigenous foods. You know, how can we bring some of the more traditional diets back in? Could improve human and planetary health. But of course, it's not just diets that can help to drive this. It's also a complete holistic look at how we produce and consume. Could also look at why, for example, certain grains suddenly are not in our diets, and we often identify systemic reasons why that is the case. As we will hear today during the panel discussion, there are many policy options to incentivize dietary shifts and to support innovative, sustainable practices at every food system stage to support both nutrition and environmental goals. Policymakers and other food system actors should work collaboratively to develop a coherent and bold mix of policies adapted to local contexts. And this is something that's come out very, very clearly as well. It doesn't matter what we call it. It doesn't matter, if you like, the actions we do specifically. It's all about the local context. It's all about the political will, and it's all about ensuring that we get local impacts. Great. So one thing that we do in this is that we talk about the issue of urbanization, and we focus a little bit on cities. We understand that rapid urbanization will result in 68% of the world's population living in urban areas by 2050. So therefore, it really looks at opportunities that arise when it comes to looking at subnational governance, and opportunities that these subnational jurisdictions can actually drive more ambitious goals, more ambitious actions that could then feed back up and contribute to either a national or a federal type of activity. So I think, look, we are there. There are lots of things happening. We just heard today around the urban food, was it the Urban Food Pact or the cities? Thank you, the Food for Cities Coalition coming out of the summit. It's excellent. I think there's a lot of appetite to really utilize this, if you like, this higher ambition, this faster pace of change that we can see at the subnational level to drive more national and maybe regional goals as well. And this is backed up, of course, by the International Resource Panel, where it very much stated that urban and peri-urban food systems can alleviate environmental degradation by reducing fuel use, for example, for food distribution, limiting urban sprawl, and contributing to GHG emission, which contribute to GHG emissions and biodiversity loss, and of course, reducing food waste by creating circular systems where waste is cycled back into food production systems. So I think I'll leave it there, Dinaka. I think it's a great paper, and I really look forward to hear feedback from the team, from all of you, and I do hope that it leads to the more mainstreaming nature of bringing diets towards to bring diets in as a key driver for more sustainable food systems. Thank you, Dinaka.
Thank you, James. That was very, very clear and very elaborative exposition, I would say, presentation of the paper itself. And thank you also for highlighting that indeed the problem, has been out there for quite some time, but it's quite new that we are now looking at the consumption side in connection with the production side. So that's really new, and that's really what we need to look at. Thanks also, James, for highlighting the connection with the work you're doing as part of the Coronovia working group. I think that's excellent, and it provides us an opportunity as nutrition and environmental communities together to also bring this on the table of the COP, of the climate COP, but also the biodiversity COP. So that's very, very helpful. I heard you say over and over again using the word vicious cycle, but then again, while you were progressing in your presentation, you started to also pointing at solutions. So really, let's try to change that vicious cycle in a virtuous cycle. Improving the environment for better diets and protecting the planet at the same time. One word about the emphasis in the paper on the urbanization. I think that's an important one, and I've been able to listen in a bit during the main events of this regional stock-taking event in Hanoi, and I heard several times about the need to look at multi-level governance, because the solutions we are looking for, also in context of this paper, are very context specific. So if you want to make that happen, and if you want to move in an inclusive way, we will have to look at multi-level governance. And cities, but also regions, do that. So I'm happy that also in this event, we will have a few colleagues and panelists that will address the issues from that perspective. So thanks again, James. And without further ado, I would like to move on now to our next speaker, who is Tom Arnold from Ireland. And Tom Arnold is the Special Envoy for Food Systems, but prior to that, and we worked often together, Tom, you've been doing so many things, always in support of food security and nutrition. So I'm happy you agreed to be with us today, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you about your examples and experiences in Ireland. Over to you, Tom.
Well, thank you very much, Stinika. I was asked really to talk about the Irish experience of developing its agri-food strategy up to 2030, which I chaired in 2020 and 21, which turned into a document called Food Vision 2030. And it really attempts to, or it built into that strategy, some of the things that James has been talking about, the nexus, the need to deal with both environmental issues and nutrition and health issues. And it's important to say that this was the fifth such national agri-food strategy since the year 2000. So there's a history of developing strategies using a multi-stakeholder process. And we were asked, our essential terms of reference was to put forward a set of policy measures which would ensure that Ireland's agri-food strategy would be fully sustainable in economic, environmental, and social terms by 2030. And that's what we did. We have a whole set of policy recommendations under 4 key missions and 22 goals. So that's, if you like, the policy agenda that Ireland will be working to over the period of the next 10 years. But it's important to acknowledge that even though previous strategies, I think, brought benefits, they weren't fully successful. And the previous, specifically this previous strategy, had made commitments on the environment which were not delivered upon. And during the previous 5 years, we had water quality deteriorating, you had emissions increasing, and biodiversity deteriorating. Now, some of that was directly due to a rapid expansion of dairying in the country following the abolition of the EU milk quotas in 2015. So it is quite clear that this strategy, what became Food Vision 2030, had to have right at the center of its priority the need to tackle the agri-environmental problems. And that is indeed what happened. It is the first mission, and it has got a lot of attention. But it wasn't easy to get agreement. And our committee drawing up this strategy, 32-person committee, had a number of representatives of the environmental sector. And at a certain stage, coming close to the end of our work, they decided to withdraw because they felt that what was likely to emerge wasn't substantial enough. Now, I disagreed with that, but anyway, it was their prerogative to withdraw if they wanted to, and that's what they did. But this, I think, gives rise to a more general point that we're seeing in many countries a sharpening division between, let's call them agriculturalists and environmentalists. And I think if we're to tackle this problem of, working towards a more effective agri-environmental policy, there's going to have to be investment made in bridging this divide and in investing in relationships which make sure that, we can find some kind of middle ground here that means that both environmentalists and agriculturists can sign up to the way forward. In any event, we came up with what I believe is an ambitious set of agri-environmental measures, and they are now being implemented through a whole series of measures at national level. The other thing that was a real innovation for this Food Vision 2030 was that we built in, for the first time in any of the agri-food strategies, a special dimension of nutrition and health, really reflecting the fact that Ireland, in common with every other country, has to deal with the triple burden of malnutrition. And so we have put in, I think, a number of innovative measures there, which I hope are going to be delivered and implemented. So that's basically, we finalized the strategy in July 2021. It's approved by the government, and it's now in the process of implementation. And the first full implementation report will be produced in the next week or so, and that will indicate where progress has been made, in some cases completed, and where other areas still remains to be done. So that's the critical importance of the implementation report, is that it gives a transparency and an accountability to the strategy and how it's delivered. So I leave it at that, Sunika, because I know time is short, but I hope that's of some relevance to the debate that you want to stimulate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tom. And yes, indeed, it does give what we are looking for, and it does give good input to the discussions and the conversations we are looking forward to have in a few seconds. Let me just emphasize your last two words, the reporting you are doing, that is serving to not just report on what you did, but really to be transparent and accountable about what you did, because that helps to build trust. And that is so important when you work across sectors and with multiple actors. When I was listening to you, Tom, I was also interpreting a little bit your words, so apologize if I'm kind of misusing your words. But when you said the agriculture people and the environmental people need to work together, that also means that they need to speak the same language. And that also, it needs a trust then as well. So the steps you've been taken slowly, but certainly, to me, it seems that it's really helping and moving into the right direction. So thank you so much for sharing these examples, and also for, apart from addressing the triple environmental crisis, as you said, the climate change, the biodiversity loss, and the pollution, linking that to improving health and nutrition as well. So that's amazing. I'd like to move on now to our panelists, and we will be very pleased to listen to examples from several regions, from Latin America, Africa, and Asia. And of course, we heard from Europe already through Tom. So we'll have a few panelists. They will have 5 to 6 minutes each. And I would like to start with the panelists from Brazil, from the municipality of Rio de Janeiro. And we will have two people speaking there. We will start with the Minister of Social Assistance, Mr. Ailton Pires, and then he will be followed by Igor Bachelos. And he will also start, Igor, by helping to translate the introductory words from the Minister. The floor is yours. I'm looking forward to your intervention.
Good morning, Brazil. Good night over there. Good evening.
Eu queria agradecer o convite para participar desse encontro tão importante em meu nome, em nome do prefeito Eduardo Paes, e desejar que todos nós possamos ter um bom encontro hoje.
I would like to congratulate the invitation for Rio de Janeiro and representing the city and our mayor Eduardo Paes for participating in this event, and we greet everyone. So we'll start our presentation now. We speak from a city that is over 7 million people and the second largest city in Brazil. So first, I would like to mention the importance of debating this issue in the serious context of the climate crisis that we face globally. For a long time, we have been betting on great solutions from major actors for the commitment to curb global warming and to contain greenhouse gas effects. The current food system is also responsible for this crisis. The discard logic walks connected with ultra-processed food industry that, in addition to producing large amounts of waste, such as plastic, styrofoam, and other types of packaging that are not always sustainable, it is also responsible for the increase of cancer rates, as recent studies have shown, reaching younger age groups. It is also very important, the initiative of local, regional, and national institutions and government to develop sustainable system in different areas that can help us overcome this crisis. However, we can no longer think about initiatives in isolated ways. We must encourage the connection between different areas of science, technology, and society to face this problem. This network is fundamental. Exchanges are essential for a different future. Nutrition and environmental communities must work together. Brazil is a continental country recognized worldwide for its food production, especially in agriculture and cattle raising. However, our development as a country was based mostly on exporting commodities, extensive productions of food that does not feed the people themselves, such as coffee, corn, soybean, cane, and others. Our former president, Bolsonaro, in his first institutional act, dissolved the National Council of Food and Nutrition Security, thus dissolving the National System of Food and Nutrition Security, CISAN, which marked a major setback in the development of circular and sustainable food systems. In addition, several other actions contributed to the increase in the prices of food, to the point that large part of Brazilian population stopped having the proper meal, not being able to predict what to eat in the next day. The pandemic is not responsible for those rates. However, they catalyze the process. Today in Brazil, over 33 million people starve. The last period was marked by a complete absence of responsibility from the federal government to overcome hunger and to guarantee healthy food for our population. It was left to the cities and some states more committed to the food and nutrition security agenda to promote this policy. In addition to that, numerous fertilizers banned internationally have been introduced to the Brazilian market, being widely sold and used, harming our soil, our waters, and our health, many of which are proven to be carcinogenic. The debate of a new food system in Brazil and in the world involves understanding that the current form of production is as harmful to the environment as it is to our human bodies. The federal government, through the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Supply, released almost 5,000 pesticides since the year 2000. The presidential administration that most opened those doors was Bolsonaro's too. Over 1,500 pesticides were granted by Bolsonaro, and over 1,082 are considered extremely toxic to health and to the environment. The development of the food and nutrition security agenda is a priority in our city. We currently have a different initiatives from the City Hall management that structure and demonstrate this commitment, such as our 32 sheltering units for people in vulnerability. We serve almost 225,000 meals a year. That is almost 800 tons of food a year served. We guarantee that the food is produced by professional and supervised by nutritionists, so that we make sure that we offer the proper diet with a homemade production, even if on large scale. We have the Prato Feito Carioca. It's a meal for informal workers that we charge a card for a daily basis meal. And in the last 8 months, this pilot program served already over 1 million meals. We today have over 15 community kitchens working in the city in different regions that in the last 8 months served over 1 million meals to in people below poverty line. We have Carioca's vegetable garden, created to reduce and to stimulate the consumption of healthy food. Today, Carioca's garden works in 56 points in the cities, being 29 communities and 27 schools in the city's education network. In the last 16 years, this program has already produced over 1,000 tons of foods, benefiting over 600,000 families, 60,000 families, sorry. The program has already been received 3 recognitions, including 2 international ones. With initiatives like these and others that are yet to come, like publishing our first food and nutritional security plan in the city, we seek to develop sustainable circular food systems, always aware that the challenges and limitations, but aiming the best and possible for our city and for our country. The impact of the absence of responsibility with environmental policy led us to discover the calamity of Yanomami natives in Amazon, facing in the last period. Although Yanomamis have a vast botanical knowledge and are historically supported by gathering food and fishing and hunting, their survival is still threatened by contamination of water due to illegal mining and the impossibility to hunt due to the presence of prospectors. Problems that are still spreading over the area, more than 9 million acres located in the northern of Amazon. One of the main challenges in this situation is the development
can I
of
ask
a plan.
you to wrap up so that we can also move to the other
The
panelists?
last words.
Thank you.
My last words. Sorry. The main challenge in the situation is to develop a plan of government that is continuous and committed to advancing on daily basis. In the past, we talked about leaving a better future for our children, and the future is now. We must work together as government and society. But even though environmental crisis and food and nutritional security is going through a critical moment, it's important to remember that in the past, Brazil overcame hunger. So therefore, not only have a government today that is favorable to those changes, but new agents and partnerships are being developed to face hunger and climate changes. A lot of cities in Brazil are working on those agendas, and we have a very prospective year for today. So I'd like to thank for participating. I'll be here to contribute whenever the audience urges. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And it was really heartening to listen to you and to see how Brazil is on the one hand struggling, but on the other hand is also managing to connect national, federal level policies with local level policies. And now you've been yeah, struggling to get back on track also after the abolition of the National Food and Nutrition Council, now with it being reinstalled and reconnecting with the local level activities. So thank you so much for these contributions and good examples. I'd like to move on now and move to Africa, to Kenya. We have Rose Achieng, who is the Agri-Nutrition Coordinator of the Department of Agriculture. And I'd like to ask you basically two questions. You, Rose, have been participating in the development of the Dikusumu food system strategy for now until 2027. And how does this strategy address nutrition and environmental interlinkages? But also, I'd like to know what the key activities are that the Kisumu district is undertaking in the framework of the agri-food links that you are coordinating with ICLEI and Africa. Rose, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, team. Kisumu County, let me address the first one on the strategy. So Kisumu County becomes the second devolved unit in Kenya after
Rose,
Kisumu County.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You need to be speaking a little bit better into the microphone of your laptop or computer so that we hear you very well. Please try again.
Is it now better?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So county of Kisumu becomes
You're moving away again from the microphone. I'm sorry.
right.
Now it's good.
Is it okay? Is it now better?
It's better now.
Okay. So I'm saying Kisumu County becomes the second devolved unit in Kenya after Nairobi City to develop the county food strategy towards implementation of the session paper number 1 of 2012 on the National Food Nutrition Security
Rose, I'm
Policy.
sorry, but the sound is again moving away. I think that the soon, when you're looking at the camera, it's okay, but when you're not looking at the camera, I cannot hear you.
Okay, so is it better again?
No, it's not better now.
Okay, I'm just looking at the camera when speaking. Is it better?
Now it's very good.
It's good. Okay, so our policy puts emphasis on promotion of sustainable food production systems, support to effective food storage, processing and preservation of the food. It also supports investment in infrastructure, income generating activities, water harvesting, promotion of safe practices in food production, encouragement of monitoring of food consumption, dietary indicators, strengthening of nutrition surveillance, and implementation of effective food relief and safety nets. Is it okay that far?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Thank you. So the county food system strategy 2023 to 2027 has been developed in the context of rapid population, urbanization, growing wealth, changing consumption patterns, globalization, climate change, and the depletion of natural resources. The expected developments in this food system strategy are programmed to yield results in the food system governance that we believe will take care of nutrition and the environment. And then there is the production, post-harvest handling, and value addition. We also have infrastructure development, which includes the market access and ICT, which is now the key thing among the youth who believe in the secondary part of farming and not the primary one, which involves production. And then there is the nutrition bit of it. We have the food safety and health, mainstreaming cross-cutting issues, where we have climate change, food loss, food waste, and gender within Kisumu County. So far, so good for the food strategy, how it can address nutrition and linkages in the document that we had.
Thank you.
Then-
Thank you so much, Rose. That was really helpful. And what I heard is that you really combine so many activities, investments, production and consumption, trying to link the two, but you work on value addition as well. And that may also, of course, attract youth and make the strategy and the activities you're doing more attractive for youth. I really see that how you and some private sector, public and private sector actors are joining forces to let's call that nudging the consumers towards the purchase of healthy food from sustainable food systems. So that's really, really nice. I think I might come back to you, Rose, and maybe when I come back to you, you may want to switch off your camera so that we even can enjoy better the voice of the sound of your voice. For the quality that may be better, but I think I was able to hear most of it. I'd like to move on now to Indonesia, to Nyoman Saman Arta, who is the director of Pasar Rakyat in Bali. You have. I'd like to ask you. We are speaking of value change, as we could hear from Rose as well, that connect rural and urban areas and support the production and consumption of nutritious foods through sustainable farming practices. There are challenges there that need to be overcome, in particular for smallholder farmers to achieve a profitable and fair business model. And to ensure also that their products reach to consumers in urban areas. So I think that's not a new challenge. I think many of the previous speakers in this event, but also in the main session in Hanoi, have been trying to address these. But could you tell us your experience in addressing these challenges as director of Pasar Rakyat? So related to smallholders, value change of healthy foods, and also profitable and fair farming. Over to you.
Thank you, Stenica. So I would like to share my screen. Is that possible?
Please go ahead.
Okay. Is it on now?
Yes.
Okay. We are from Pasar Rakyat, so we're focusing on Pasar Rakyat means people market. So we are focusing on building value chains for organic farming based on local wisdom, like what James mentioned before. So we try to address that to empower the local and build a business model that more profitable and providing healthy food for everybody. So our vision is our vision is to establish value change model and education center in Bali and Indonesia for affordable organic food and natural resources, which is this for industrial use based on local knowledge. And our value is ethical, empowering, created added value, and market oriented, and also quality product. To achieve that, we have identified our challenge, which is damaged soil that we're facing right now because of the chemical use, and then imbalanced ecosystem, which is also because of the chemical use for a long time in our agriculture, and also it's because of impact of global warming, climate change, unpredictable weather. This is very hard for us as a farmers on the field. And then supply chains, it's we experiencing unfair value chains of high risk and low return. And human resources, this farming is not attracted to young people now, to the youth. So because of that, average farmers that we have right now is 55 years old. If this continue, it will be in 10 years from now, we won't have anybody to farm anymore. Financing of the conventional finance wouldn't finance us because it's not bankable. And then also it's not fit with our agriculture industry. And then the missing link of the local knowledge, which is Bali culture is based on agriculture, but we are now have the problem of missing link because of the tourism is booming in Bali. Our solution is we are introducing in our model organic and multi-crop system with regenerative agriculture and closed loop system. And then product diversification on perishable and non-perishable to lower risk. Reintroduce large species to maintain the pest control and pest mitigation to rebuild the food chain in our farm. And then leadership. This is very important to maintain the mindset of the farmers, and then also teaching the youth on which organic farming are actually profitable if you do it right. R&D, this is the key point. R&D is used to be is not very not deliver in the comprehensive ways. So it's not addressing the problem and giving the solution to farmers. And then utilizing proper technology and modern management. This is our solution. And our implementation on the field on that so far is we are a multi-crop, the food production and essential oil, also other natural material that's needed by industry. So it's not perishable and non-perishable to mitigate the risk. In that particular thing, we also reintroduce traditional Balinese farming. So it's with local wisdom that's already proven for hundreds of years. But since the introduce of green revolution, that's being forgotten, and selecting the right crop, the food crop and high value non-perishable product, and processing directly in the farm, maximizing efficiency and minimizing carbon footprint. So this will reduce efficiency and effectiveness use of farmland and working hours, decrease risk, and increase farmer income and profit. So our closed loop system aim to minimize outside input in our operation, and then has goal for self-sufficient of organic fertilizer, seedling, and energy. This is very rare now because farmers is very depending on outside input. So has zero waste goal. So we are using all the waste from our farm, either for energy and then or for fertilizer or we are multi-crop also with livestock. We have cows in our farm, and we have goat, and we use this to make our fertilizer. And then we feed our livestock with the wheatling when we do wheatling, and then we feed it to our livestock. Minimizing carbon footprint and maximizing carbon sinking. Because we are organic, we are healing the soil. The soil have organic soil, healthy soil will have a lot of ability to absorb carbon. This is what we're doing, and integrate design for local climate and regenerative agriculture. And on top of that, we harvest added value because Bali is tourist destination. So we make our activities, and we have 9 sites now in Bali. We also use that as a tourist attraction for people to learn, to come and about organic farming, and this will adding the revenue for the farmers. And like we creating, like in Nusa Penida, we have Ilang Ilang Hills to that multi-crop with dragon fruit and etc. So next is we also using our farm for education center for training of trainers, farmers, community, and youth. In that education center, we using system hand-on learning method, and then continuous R&D. We do R&D on our side. Is that improve or what we need to add more, and involving local university. We also invite local university to use our farm as study case. And we open our farm for students and communities, either local or region or international. And then in all of our farm, we are implementing local wisdom and see it from our perspective. And to make this happen
can I
in a sustainable way.
Wrap up, Nyoman?
Okay. Just we are involving all stakeholders to collaborate with us in our business model to make it more efficient and effective. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nyoman. And I think your last slide did it all, even though I interrupted you a little bit, but it really showed that systemic approach to the issues. And I appreciated how you are able to combine the several challenges into integrated solutions, increasing efficiency, but also at the same time decreasing risks for your farmers, closing the loop so that you have better environmental results or less environmental problems, and also really look at your activities, how you manage to maintain youth or attract youth to the business, because that's basically a worldwide problem. So thank you so much for sharing these examples. So let's
thank you, Stenica.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let's move now back to Africa, Southern Africa, Zimbabwe. We have Runya Esther Chibota online, who is the regional coordinator for Hivos of the Urban Futures program of Hivos. So I'd like to ask you, Runya, you having assessed the interactions youth have with their food environment, what would you say are the key linkages between youth, health, nutritional status, and their environment? Or otherwise said, what has influenced that change in diets? And then maybe at the same time, you can tell us a bit more about the Urban Futures project, but also how that system thinking has been useful in understanding the food environment of a city. Over to you, Runya.
Okay, thank you so much, Nike. Yeah, I definitely agree with what's been shared by the rest of my colleagues and panelists. Hivos has really focused on young people and actually having their voice and understanding from their perspective what they consider the challenges that are impacting their nutrition and their diet. So we're basically, what I'm presenting is factors that are driving the shift based on what the youth shared in the 2 studies that we did. The work we're doing focused on Zimbabwe, Bulawayo, and Harare, but we also, with the Urban Futures Project, will be focusing on 3 regions, the Southern region, Latin America, and Indonesia. So I'll be sharing the findings from that research. So, I mean, pretty much like what you've said, besides urbanization, the key factors that influence the diet for young people is the movement towards ultra-processed food. And that's because healthy food has become very expensive for young people. In the stats that we had from ZimVac, 40% of households struggle to get a balanced meal with nutritional value in Zimbabwe. And that's causing very high health deficiencies and food security concerns. We also realized that with young people, they're picky. So when we did discuss indigenous foods and traditional foods, they do understand the nutritional value, but they said it was not attractive. And as opposed to the fast foods, the way it's marketed, the massive aggressive marketing towards ultra-processed foods, the young people were moving away from indigenous food and felt that it wasn't as appealing and as attractive. And if in Southern Africa, most sources of food are from the informal sectors. And the setup may not always be conducive, as well as the geographical distance they have to travel within their communities to access the affordable food. And then a lot of people depend on food from neighboring countries. That's because of the high prices of food within the country. And you'll find that in Zambia, in Zim, the cities that we focused on had that input from the young people that affordability is an issue. So they depend on remittances from neighboring countries like South Africa, Botswana. And often even in the schools, when we examine the schools, the institutions, the food that's available in the tuck shops is often snacks. And so it's about accessibility. What is accessible around them? But also, this is people's livelihood. And most people found it more lucrative to sell ultra-processed foods instead of organic traditional food, obviously because of the time it takes to prepare and the whole process in the value chain. But we also find certain things like beliefs impacting people's food choices. There's a narrative, particularly in Southern Africa, and I can speak for Zim and Zambia, that when people are seen to eat healthy food, the perception is that the stigma is that you're not well. And that's the only time that people start to change their diet. For example, when COVID happened, people became more aware of things like moringa and becoming more healthier, but these are things that have existed. So the narrative needs to change, which is what Urban Futures is really trying to do, is change the perception that young people have of healthy food, of indigenous food, of the myths about eating healthy is only when you're sick or a last-minute resort. And we want them to own this problem and to become part of the solution. We obviously know, climate change has affected the type of crops that can be produced. And most young people have left that industry and have gone to maybe coal production because they haven't found it lucrative to grow healthy foods. So the Urban Futures Project is looking at all these challenges that young people are saying: affordability, accessibility, taste, preferences, and saying, how can we get young people to be at the forefront of the solution? So the Urban Futures Project, which is being done in partnership with Partner, is looking at how can we promote climate resilient cities in Southern Africa, focusing on Zim and Zambia, in Costa Rica, Ecuador, Colombia, and Indonesia. And so we're bringing our heads together and saying, this is a global problem. How can we learn from each other best practices to engage young people to be part of the policy? It starts at policy. Young people aren't well acquainted with the policy in terms of food security, in terms of, for example, they produce food, but they don't really work well with the food safety measures. So they often lose their produce and it goes to waste because they're not applying the policies that govern how food should be packaged, how it should be processed, and how it should be consumed and sold to customers. and they're not meeting the criteria, therefore losing business and leading to food wastages. There's also a lack of knowledge on food preservation techniques, how to then diversify the products into multiple products that can be then sold and add value to the value chain. So we really want to get young people involved in the policy. How can they be at the forefront of even informal sectors? How can we adjust the policy so that young people have an active say and can play in the economy of agri-foods? And then we're also trying to change the narratives, their perception about consumption patterns, and we want them to be at the forefront of those ideas. And last year, we had the opportunity through the Youth Food Action Project in partnership with UNICEF to actually fund a couple of innovative ideas led by young people around aquaponics, around making fun in traditional foods, diversifying the way they'll produce it and techniques, and going to the schools and trying to make it more exciting. Also, there's a need for marketing healthier food in a way that attracts young people. We did radio shows. We went into schools. So we really need to get to the level of young people. They're not always going to sit in food labs or sit in, seminars and stuff. And then lastly, there's a big gap we identified that young people don't easily find access to financial institutions to support the green businesses. And that's what the Urban Futures Project also wants to do. How can we work with the city council, the locals, the young people collaboratively in finding out the best way to increase that access to financial resources so that they can boost the green entrepreneurs in that space. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Arunya. That was really exciting and energizing to listen to you. You gave so many examples, both of the challenges, but also of the solutions. And a few of those examples are, in fact, across the board, like you work directly with youth, and so many of the other panelists address the same issue, but from slightly different angles, but still with the same objective. I also appreciated how you spoke about shifting the narrative and therefore trying to change the perception of young people in order to eat healthier diets and also diets that are more sustainable, looking at various options, including indigenous people. And I tried to read a little bit the chat in the meantime, that is also running parallel to the conversation we are having. And there were even some examples there of millet. So I see that even these indigenous crops that are oftentimes very well connected and to the context and cultural acceptable and often also very nutritious could play an interesting role in solving some of these solutions. So thank you very much for these examples. So but you were also the last person of the panel. So we do have some time to have an overall conversation. So I do invite the participants who are online to drop their questions in the Q&A box, if not done so far. I have not seen many. I would have a question definitely for sure for all the panelists. But before I do, I will ask my question. I would like to give the opportunity to Rose, who was a little bit difficult to understand every now and then. And Rose, feel free not to use your camera now. I'd like to ask you to maybe react to a few of the things you heard so far, particularly maybe reacting to the city examples, because I know that you were also going to give some examples of your work related to cities. So maybe if you can limit yourself to 2 minutes or so, and then we go to the overall Q&A session. Rose, the floor is yours.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
I was asking if you would like to react to anything that you've heard from the panelists, because you were, I think, the one who spoke shortest. And then also if you would particularly focus on those elements that are related to urban context, because you also were providing some examples of urban contexts. So you can link to your own urban work there.
Okay, thank you. I actually spoke shortest because I just addressed The first one, which was on agri-nutrition linkages on the strategy, but I did not mention something on the Afri-food links. So that was the next one. But I have
to say something now about your work in the African cities. Please go ahead.
Okay. The project is just starting in Kisumu County, and we already have a division of labor. The coordination of the project is working on, we have one person doing the coordination of the project who is attached to the work program number 4. And it's relevant to the project we are talking about here because it involves improving food environments for urban consumers, schools, and food retailers through real-world experimentation. And then we'll be having a draft case study on urban food environments in Kisumu County, and another one on the urban food diversity, production areas, sources of foods, and staple foods. Then we have another work with the city and the county representatives who are also to deliver on the review of urban or city food system programs in Kisumu and Kenya in the past 10 years. So this means we'll be looking at the documents, the policy documents that are there, that have been there in the past 10 years, and see the gaps that are there. Then they can be brought up and being addressed. Again, on the work program 2, it involves strengthening multi-stakeholder governance process. But this one is already started with a USAID project, which helped Kisumu now to come up with a multi-stakeholder mapping, which states everything that all the stakeholders are doing in Kisumu County. And then on the work program 3, we have the promotion of inclusive and circular agribusiness and innovation. And then the draft case study is on innovation of urban food business in the county. And finally, we have another case study that will be on innovative urban food business in the county and their linkages to nutrition assessment and needs. Thank you so far. The list is long, but that's the brief. Thank you.
Thank you so much for getting back to us with your good examples. Okay, I can see that some questions have come in. Let me start with one question. There is a question here from Smriti Sharma, who is part of a not fully fledged agriculture initiative, and she'd like to know, how can we incorporate food loss prevention and safety at a small scale? So I think that could be maybe addressed by Nyoman. While you think about that question, I would also like all the panelists to think about a question that I really want to ask to all of you, because I'm curious. So you really provided your examples from a food system perspective. So that's very clear. And I also would like to know to what extent you may have or may not have any linkages with pathways, the food system summit pathways in your countries. Or maybe it's not relevant, but then it's interesting to know why. Or maybe if you would have any linkages with any of the food system summit coalitions that might be relevant to your work. So that's a question to all the panelists, and the food losses and waste question, I think Nyoman would be best positioned to answer that, but if anyone else would like to address that one is most welcome as well. Nyoman, over to you.
Thank you, Stenica. So in our system operation, to prevent the food loss, when we have overproduction or like during COVID. So we are donating our food because we are multi-crop with essential oil. So when we have food oversupply, we donate it to orphanage and the people who need it, or we sell it in the low price and distribute it to the people that couldn't afford or to get healthy food. So during COVID, we are donating about 250 ton of food. So this is one, and two is to lengthen the lifespan of the food. So this is with strategy to harvest at the right time, and when there's rainfall, we are washing the like vegetable. So this is to lengthen the lifespan of the food. And if we have overproduction and if the market doesn't absorb our produce, and we donate it to people in need. So this is what our strategy so far. But we wish that we have like more facility and infrastructure to store it for longer, like chiller and in the future. So if we have that on the farm, so we can actually store the perishable product to lengthen the lifespan of the product. But right now we don't have it yet, so we're just able to donate it. So we're not actually throwing it away. And if it's not all distributed, we reuse that food into the organic fertilizer. So we ferment it and we make it into fertilizer. So bring back everything that come from the farm to the farm, because we found out that the best fertilizer is the fertilizer that made from the same species of plant. So this way we figure out that our organic fertilizer that we made on the farm, if we use that same species, it will be improve the yield for the next round. That is what we do. So there's no waste, there's no zero waste. So we hope that we can use it to give it to the people for more, but if we cannot, so we use it as a fertilizer.
Thank you so much. I mean, I knew you were the one to address this question when I thought to your presentation with your closed loop activity. So that was excellent.
Thank you.
Before I'm challenging the panelists with my own question, I'd like to go to Igor for another question that came in through the participants. So there is this little city group in Lilongwe in Malawi, but they are not really a project, but they like to have a permanent citizen-led structure in the city council. So there is the question if there's any experience to share. So I think maybe the example from Rio de Janeiro could be good here. Igor, would you like to react?
Sure. I don't. Just make sure if I understood the question right. So he's asking about the council in his city. Is that it? So in Brazil, we faced a very hard time in the late years since the council was dissolved. So a lot of cities lost space of constructing the public policy. So now in this government, we're reconstructing that nationally on the states of Brazil and in the cities of Brazil. So this year, we have a projections of making conferences in the cities, in the states, and nationally to make way to public participation in the public policy. So that is an arena that different sectors of the government participate and of society. So it's a little how it happens in Brazil. We call that a fundamental part of CISAM, which is the system that organizes the public policies of food and nutrition services around Brazil and our cities. And since that was solved, now we're reconstructing that process. That's the moment that we live in today. I don't know if I helped, but that's about it, what we're facing today in Brazil.
Thank you, Igor. I think that's very clear, and I think it's a good example that the group in Lilongwe may want to take advantage of. I also saw a question addressed to, well, I would say to James Lomax, who presented our discussion paper on nutrition and environmental linkages. And that question is about if we could highlight a few of the key messages specifically related to climate and nutrition. James, do you feel comfortable to highlight a few? I know you mentioned a few, but just maybe in one additional minute or so. And of course, the paper will be online. If it's not online yet, then it will be online by tomorrow. We will be able to paste the link to the paper very soon. James, over to you. Or do I put you on the spotlight too much now?
No, that's fine. You know me, Stinica. I can always I don't mind being in the spotlight. It's fine. Well, look, I think the, you know, for some of us that have been working on food systems for a while, the connection between climate and nutrition has been fairly direct, actually, those linkages. But sometimes, you know, you have to start to look at science as it starts to come out. And what we have seen, I think, within UNEP anyway, is we have seen a distinct shift in the way that scientists, independent scientists, if you like, that contribute to the IPCC or even contribute to the IPBES, the International Panel on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, are starting to equate the two as well. So I think it is becoming mainstream. We do have, if you don't mind me saying, we do have a bit of an issue in the Sharm el-Sheikh joint working group where demand side measures are not being discussed. However, I think that's on the mitigation side, but on the adaptation side and the resilience side, I think there is scope to talk about demand side measures as we look to increase resilience of our agriculture and food systems. So I think the linkages are clear. I do urge everybody to read it, and then it may become a bit clearer to all of you. But of course, look, climate is important, of course it is, but also, you know, nature, pollution, malnutrition. You know, Tom said what's it? The triple burden of malnutrition, so hunger, hidden hunger, and obesity. Yeah. So you know, these are all things that sort of come together around this. So I think the main conclusion here is that good nutrition partners good planet. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, James. And maybe Tom, you would also like to react here, because I heard in your intervention you mentioned that specifically in Ireland with the expanding livestock sector, dairy sector, there is also an increasing well, climate gas emission problem. So that's another link. I don't know if you would like to elaborate on that a little bit more.
Well, I mean, James's point that it's only now that this link between climate and nutrition and climate and food systems is being formally recognized in the COP system. It's been long overdue, and I think the fact that the COP28 presidency is putting such a clear focus on this represents a real opportunity to move this debate along in a way that it hasn't been done before. And I think the paper, from what I understand of the paper presented earlier by James, that paper can help in that regard. I don't really want to get into too much into the whole business of livestock numbers. I mean, I would start from the point that livestock is an integral part of overall food systems, and that point actually just needs to be hammered home. I think there's some very simplistic thinking that you know, somehow or other livestock meat consumption is a bad thing in certain quarters. Well, I mean, it's meat consumption in certain societies, in certain wealthy areas, needs probably to reduce. But overall, the importance of meat, of animal protein in good nutrition practice is of, you know, that needs to be recognized. So, I mean, that's, and I do go back to the other point that I made almost in passing, that if we are to make progress on some of these agri-environment issues, we're going to have to get to a point where the different sides of this debate are speaking to each other and listening to each other in a much more respectful way, with a view to trying to make progress. Because at the moment, there's a degree of polarization in many societies, particularly in Europe, which I think is deeply unhealthy. And it's also it's not going to enable progress to be made on actually tackling and making progress on some of these areas.
Thanks so much, Tom, for these remarks. And basically, it gets back to what you said earlier, that environmentalists and agriculturists need to work together, and the nutritionists as well, learn to speak the same language, join forces in order to find the synergies to solve the triple planetary crisis, but also the triple burden of malnutrition. So that's many problems, and these problems are nuanced. And I think what our paper is trying to do is try to bring out the science that is behind it, and tries to explain the multiple linkages that can reinforce each other, and that there are entry points in order to turn that vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle. Yeah, I'd like to, before I say more on this, I'd like to challenge a little bit the people on the panel, including James and Tom, with my question on the national pathways and or the food system summit coalitions. If you have any linkages or any form of interaction with these in your particular context, I'm very curious to hear that. So maybe the four of you, the five of you have 1 minute to address that question before we wrap up the panel discussion. Let's start with Newman. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. So I just gonna write on the chat box. So we are now to deliver our idealism and our project. We have very limited resources. So, and we would like to build a network, international network, and then also in the business ways to overcome the challenge. There's a lot of challenge that we have to overcome on delivering this initiative to give the healthy food to everybody. And then, is it possible? Because in every harvest of the farm, we have not just a premium quality, but we have the third grade, the second grade, and all this stuff. So we can actually sell those with cross subsidized to the people, that to everybody, so that make the healthy food affordable for everybody and available for everybody. And plus, if we do the multi-cropping and regenerative agriculture, that is the best strategy to face our challenge at this time. But we need support. We need support from everybody. We can't do this alone. And I hope, you know, we can work together with great collaboration to build fair value chains that benefited for everybody, and either for environment that we're facing right now, and also for malnutrition. Because what available now in the market is just
Thank
processed
you. I
food.
think you did your minute.
Yeah.
I know
Okay,
when I
thank you.
challenge people to try to stick to 1 minute, it's easy to jump to 5 minutes and more. But I think you made
Okay.
your point very clear. You establishing a network, working on the challenges, and really also looking for support. And you did not address immediately the question I asked about what type of, you know, the food system coalition, but I do see quite a few linkages there, and we'll definitely get back to you on that.
Okay, thank
Can I
you.
move to Runya now, who I see has her camera on, to address that same question? You have 1 minute. I'll try to interrupt you if you don't mind, if you go over.
Okay, was it a question or just my final remarks?
Well, it's over to you, because I can't guide you guys anymore.
Okay.
So your final remark is fine as well.
Okay, so fine. I think there was a question around how do we, you know, develop those permanent structures within the city council where citizens take ownership. And I just wanted to speak to that. I did type to the question, but this issues around nutrition and climate are very, how do I put it? They're coming to light, but they have to be contextualized to the city. And I think it's very important to understand to that particular city, what do they consider healthy and what are the things that are affecting their health, and then what are the available resources within that city. And I think most of you are doing that. For example, in Indonesia, I saw that. But what the approach we're taking to work with the city council is we want to develop advisory committees. And this is based on food labs we did. We had food labs which had multiple stakeholders. We got input from CSOs, young people, corporates, because it's not just an NGO problem. It's not just a government problem. There are multiple actors who influence the decision of what's brought to the table. And obviously the implications of emissions that affect the climate is not just a CSO problem. So we promote food labs that have multiple stakeholders sharing their perspective. So we can also understand from the consumers, from the producers, from the corporates, how that all plays into the economy, as well as then impacting the health of young people. So I think that the question is, how can we make it lucrative, but also changing the health of young people? And how can we encourage green jobs in that space, in the issue?
I'm going to stop you now, because I think that's very clear. Yeah, basically, again, how to change the negative into something that is lucrative for the many people that need to be able to benefit. Looking at how to improve health, but also where to find the resources. So that's really a challenge, but I see you are all working on that. So Igor, 1 minute, and really 1 minute, because I know you try to go over time, and I also want to give the floor to
okay, I'll be very fast this time. In Brazil, we have a program called Food Acquisition Program. It's PAA, what we call here. And that is an initiative from the government to buy food from the producers, from farmers around Brazil, and by helping, answering a little bit, Runia, the government in Brazil is working in a project to help the farmers to sell and to continue in the agriculture business, because large industry still compete. So my question is around the same as Runia, because that's a big problem that we face worldwide. Industries that controls the fields that happens in Brazil. So how can you help small farmers keep working? And I think we're trying something in Brazil, but it's a question that we need to work better.
Thank you to bringing back the attention to small scale producers and farmers. Thank you so much. I'd like to hear from Rose quickly, 1 minute if you can, half a minute only. And I see Nancy is eager to speak, but I'll move to you, Nancy, in 1 second. Rose, are you still there? For your final comments? If not, then I'll move to Rose right away.
Okay, my final comment is to Runia. I really like what she's doing in our country, because it's such a challenge reaching the young people, the teenagers, with the foods they have. I would maybe want to chat with her later, maybe through her email, just to borrow a few leaves to help our people back in Kenya too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rose. That's very positive. And I've seen so many people trying to connect with each other already online and using the chat. So as facilitators, organizers, we try to facilitate that even more also after the event.
Thank you.
Nancy, over to you for the wrap up of the panel session. And I hope you will be able to make the link to the Healthy Diet from Sustainable Food System Coalition. I'm sure you can. Over to you.
Thank you, Stinica, and good evening, everyone. It's so exciting to be able to wrap up this webinar. It's been absolutely an excellent session, and we don't have very much time. And if you could see the desk in front of me, you'd be shocked by the number of notes that I've taken over this hour and a half together. But just to say, this report that we came together to discuss today is such an important compilation of the science that supports this growing interest and growing recognition of the interlinkages of nutrition and environment. And it's so encouraging for me as a nutritionist coming from the Food and Nutrition Division at FAO to see this emphasis on nutritious foods, on healthy diets in the discussion about food system transformation, and also in the discussion about protecting our environment. And it's because of a paper like this and the evidence that's gone into this paper that really shows the importance of the burden of malnutrition globally, how food systems are driving climate change, and how it goes beyond just food. It's about that agricultural intensification that's reducing biodiversity and leading to dietary homogenization, which is really catalyzing all of the problems across climate, across environment, across nutrition. And this gives us an amazing opportunity to look at those co-benefits that can leverage these interlinkages that we've been talking about today. And all of this really came out in our panel discussion. I just want to start with mentioning Tom's incredibly inspiring words coming from the Irish experience. He really talked with transparency and honesty in such a way that is really an example for us all, building on previous gaps in success, and looking out at what the challenges were in order to build recommendations to overcome those challenges, and being serious about the challenges with the agro food systems, food camp and the environment camp, and bringing those two together. And that's really the innovative long-term thinking that he talked about at the end, and focusing on all forms of malnutrition and bringing that into the conversation is something that I think should inspire us all. We then heard from countries, all of these countries, and I just have so many notes about all different things that were said, but I did highlight from across all of those interventions a couple of keys to progress that I think came out in a lot of different ways. One is that innovation. So building off the last thing that Tom left us with, we also heard that from Indonesia. We heard that particularly from Rwanda as well. We heard again about all forms of malnutrition. Tom, you're teaching us all, and of course that's Ireland, but also Rio de Janeiro. Our colleagues from Brazil were really talking about overcoming hunger, but also ensuring healthy diets for all. So really looking at the whole spectrum and how we can build a food system that works for all. We heard loud and clear to remember urban. Now this paper, when we look at the evidence, we know that 70% of our food supply is consumed in urban environments. And we had this excellent example from Zimbabwe about urban action, but we also heard about urban from Rio de Janeiro. We heard about urban from Kenya. So it's great to be talking about food systems transformation and not leave ourselves thinking only on the production side, and thinking also about all the way through to the consumption side. And that was brought out by James at the very beginning, the importance of balancing that demand and supply side. A fourth key that I heard about was the use of evidence. And again, that brings us right back to the paper, the reason we're here today. But I heard about all kinds of evidence. I heard about local wisdom from Indonesia, which is absolutely critical. I heard again about learning from our own experiences from the example from Ireland. And finally, our last key to progress that I think I heard in many of these interventions was inclusion. We heard about youth in Kenya. Thank you so much for that. Of course, we heard about youth in Zimbabwe. We heard about youth in Indonesia. And I heard Igor, who I think is a youth, giving a real call to action from Rio de Janeiro. Also talking about inclusion, we heard about gender, ensuring that we are speaking to men and women, boys and girls. So these are some keys to progress that I heard from across our entire panel. And with this information, with the evidence that's compiled in this paper that brought us together today, we're really feeding into two global initiatives that I just want to hit on real quickly, and then I'll turn it back over to you. One is this initiative on climate action and nutrition, which was launched in Sharm el-Sheikh by the government of Egypt at the COP27. And it's really to bring together partners to raise the visibility of this topic that we're talking about today, really focusing on those interlinkages between climate and nutrition. And using that advocacy and that platform from the Initiative on Climate Action and Nutrition, we can garner more support for the actions that are going to continue to be catalyzed through that Coalition for Action for Healthy Diets from Sustainable Food Systems. So Stenica, I brought it back to the coalition as you asked me to do. But what I'd really like to do is invite everyone that shared their experiences today to consider joining that coalition. You can use this coalition to share your experiences, to forge new alliances, and really to amplify a collective input. And anyone out there in the audience that's interested, I see that my team has dropped here in the chat both links to the ICANN initiative and to the Healthy Diet Coalition. And I really welcome all of you to explore the information on the website and reach out and join us as we search for solutions to multiple problems with co-benefits from dual impact interventions. So with that, Stenica, I'm going to hand it back over to you and thank everyone again for their participation.
Thank you so much, Nancy, and you did very well, not just summarizing in an impossible clever way the richness of this panel debate, but also indeed linking it to the Healthy Diet from Sustainable Food System Coalition and also the ICANN initiative. I'd like to, from my own perspective and from one of the, I was quite heavily involved in developing the paper, just a few more highlights, takeaways in general that I'd like to share with you. From what I listened in this session, in the Hanoi session, not just this session, but also today and yesterday, system work is difficult. It's not easy, but there are entry points, and this panel has shown very clever entry points. Also, sometimes it helps to not just do system work, but also divide a big system into smaller systems. For example, city systems or rural urban systems. That makes it more palatable and more context specific. In that context, it is therefore also important to look at multi-level governance, one of the key messages in the paper as well. An entry point that was mentioned kind of in between the lines by several of you is the connection between healthy diets, the environment, and the other way around. And there is this very strong entry point tool that we have in the UN and in FAO that's called food-based dietary guidelines. That is a tool that can connect the two. And in fact, now it's being reshaped to be in system-based dietary guidelines, if I'm not mistaken. So I really encourage you to continue looking at the sites to find those tools. Another one that was mentioned in the paper, but also by several of you, is this local and regional trade. We need local wisdom. We need inclusion of people that are in that context. And sometimes trade, regional trade, local trade, contextualized trade really helps both the environment and better access and affordability of foods and healthy diets. Then finally, the one I would like to make is on the processing, mentioned by many of you. Also mentioned in the paper. One of you mentioned we should move away from these highly processed foods, and there are simple processing techniques that do maintain nutritional quality and that fit in that produce foods that fit in a healthy diet from sustainable food systems. So these are all tools and entry points that are mentioned by you, but are also mentioned in the paper, and for which exist the science. So my last point, coming back to the science, and thank you, Nancy, and thank you to everyone for highlighting that, and also moving it back to the very first speaker this afternoon, Roberto, who had to leave, unfortunately. He also mentioned the metrics is important. So read that paper. We have a few metrics that are coming out and that are useful to work on this nutrition and environmental linkages. So with that, I'd like to close this event by thanking all of you, the panelists, the keynote speaker, the special envoy from Ireland, but also the organizers who have been working tirelessly behind the scenes to make this event a success. Thank you very much. Have a lovely rest of your day, or a lovely start of your day, depending on where you are. Have a good one. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.